there's two things I want to talk about. I want to rant a little bit. Just a little bit of a rant before we get into this. First off, the Tua Tagovailoa injury. The concussion. It's another one of those. I talked about it with Damar Hamlin when that happened, I believe. It's another one of those things that you watch, and as a sports fan, you're like, man, is all of this worth it? And like, you realize to a certain extent that like the enjoyment, the entertainment that you're getting out of the product, out of the sport, is oftentimes coming at the detriment to somebody else. Now, of course, people can and do make the argument that they are paid very handsomely for that threat and the damage that they're sustaining, and I do understand that. But when so many of these guys late in life are, I don't want to say brain dead, but they're slurring their words, they can't remember things, they can't hold a train of thought. You're like, man, does the money really matter at that point? There's all this talk about whether or not Tua Tagovailoa should medically retire. I don't think he will, ultimately. It's just one of those things, and I especially have this because I'm a fan of boxing, and so many great boxers are just not there at the end of their life, even though physically alive, mentally, emotionally, they're just gone. So it's just another one of those little reminders that the thing that you're watching and getting enjoyment out of, like, it's inherently violent, and it's something as sports fans that we have to, I suppose, come to terms with. And the second thing I want to talk about is Bryce Young. Bryce Young, it was said that he's being benched after the loss this week. And the Red Rocket's going to be starting. That's your new starting quarterback. And it kind of got me thinking about this whole savior QB fallacy, and really how much faith I have lost in draft analytics and draft prospecting over the last few seasons, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Bryce Young, when he came into the league, people were like, oh, this guy he's generational. Oh, this is a can't miss guy. There are people saying like, oh, ignore the downfalls of his height and whatever else. I remember I did my mock draft, and I said that I didn't like Bryce Young, and I said that I thought that he had high bust potential, and I got hate comments for saying that. People were saying I was stupid. People were saying that he was going to make Carolina contenders or whatever else. And now he's being benched, and you're having a career backup QB pretty much, or at least the last part of his career here, coming in to take over the reins in Andy Dalton. And it reminds me, this has happened so many times. We saw it with Trevor Lawrence, and now I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is bad or that Trevor Lawrence is a bust, but people were calling Trevor Lawrence generational, can't miss prospect, one of the best quarterback prospects we've ever seen, And now, okay, like I said, he's not bad, but he's not good. He's probably middle of the pack as far as quarterbacks go, if that, maybe kind of below middle of the pack in the NFL. And it's like all those people that were calling him generational, all those people that were like, he's a can't miss prospect, all this stuff, where are they now? Like, have they said anything? Have they admitted they were wrong? And it's too early with Williams. I haven't thought that he's looked great these first 2 weeks. He's Frazier thrown for under 100 yards both week 1 and week 2. But the same thing happened with him coming into this draft. Oh, he's generational. Can't miss prospect. One of the best quarterback prospects we've ever seen. The same thing happened with Joe Burrow. How many quarterbacks are we going to call generational? Because they can't all be generational. And so often these guys come out of nowhere. Like there's some quarterbacks that are on people's radar, like from high school. But some of these guys, it feels like they have one good year in college and people start calling them generational and everyone acts like they're can't miss prospects. And it's like, well, where'd these guys even come from? Nobody was talking about them last year. Now they won't shut up about them. And like I said, I think it's just the quarterback savior fallacy. We have all these teams that are in ruts, that are lacking for success. And they feel like they desperately need that quarterback to be good. Even though if you look right now, like, the team that is leading the NFC West has Geno Smith at quarterback. Sam Darnold is 2-0 and leading his division, like, and passing yards are down across the NFL. Passing touchdowns are down across the NFL. Do you really need a really good quarterback to be good in the NFL anymore? Like, at least right now with the modern way, I don't know. But just a little thing, like, just me and my frustrations with the way we talk about quarterback prospects. Let's get into the games. Oops. Sorry, I thought I had that set up ahead of time, but it's good now, hopefully. Okay. So, the games I watched this week, I was able to catch Buffalo, Miami. I saw Los Angeles versus Carolina. I was able to catch Tampa versus Detroit and Atlanta versus Philly. Thankfully for me, some of these games have been on while I'm at work, and my workplace is very relaxed, so I'm able to just have my phone playing the game right there with like one headphone in while I'm working. So that's how I've watched a couple of these. Now, Buffalo versus Miami. This is the game where Tua goes down. He gets hurt. Just for him, this is what, his 4th or 5th concussion, something like that. And I know he had one at Alabama. But it was just, this has continued to be an issue for Tua where he won't protect himself. He won't slide when he's rushing. And he goes head first into DeMar Hamlin, ironically enough, and he's taken out of the game. So hopefully he'll be okay. But I mean, this Miami team has definitely taken a step back from where it was last season. The offense does not look as cohesive. And I think because it was after the Big Six, I think he was like trying to prove himself because he probably was beating himself up for the Big Six, and it was like the team was going to lose the game. But it just lived to play another snap. People need to take some pointers from Tyler Lockett. Another really good game from Buffalo. But again, this game, this is encapsulating exactly what I'm talking about with the NFL this season. Josh Allen had 139 yards. He only threw the ball 19 times. Passing is down, way, way, way down in the NFL this season. Quarterbacks are being taken out of the game this season. I would say this season, the impact of a quarterback is lower than it has been since, the 90s, the early 2000s. I wasn't really watching back then, but I know it was a run-heavy game back then. But the quarterbacks, I'm telling you, right now they're not that important to winning. Buffalo Bills 31 to Miami Dolphins 10. Buffalo starts the season off 2-0. Josh Allen, like I mentioned, 13 completions on 19 attempts, 139 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions. Tua Tagovailoa, 17 completions on 25 attempts, 145 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions for Tua Tagovailoa. But I did thankfully get that one right, so I'm starting the week off with a W. Hopefully Tua, I don't know, like I said, I don't think he's going to medically retire. I think he probably needs to sit a week or two. He probably needs to sit longer, but I think he will sit a week or two. I don't know if the Dolphins play next week, but they could very easily open up this season in a hole. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get themselves out of it. And like I said, with the head coach, he's been doing this whole, like, too cool to care kind of shtick, like, vaping during games, like, kind of becoming, like, a meme, and, like, people are loving it, and, like, when you start losing, when the chips are down, that's gonna go from being funny and cute to being annoying very, very quickly, and fans will turn on him. He needs to be careful. New Orleans versus Dallas. Now, I picked the Cowboys here. Like I said, I think I said in my predictions, but for me, I don't trust Derek Carr. We saw it last season. Derek Carr would have a good game, and then the next game, he would be terrible. Not to mention, New Orleans in general last season, their offense just had a really hard time. Like, with chemistry, like, they had no real offensive chemistry or momentum last season. So I bet against New Orleans this week. I was like, Derek Carr, I feel like he does this sometimes. But hey, Derek Carr, I have to give him credit. He had another great week. 243 yards off of 11 completions, 2 passing touchdowns, and interception. I think this is back-to-back weeks. It's a QB rating of over 120. He also had a rushing touchdown. Like, Derek Carr looks really, really good this season. And, I'm happy to be wrong about this one because New Orleans looks like an exciting team. Kamara looks like an absolute beast so far. He's been tearing it up. This game, Kamara had 115 yards off of 20 carries and 3 rushing touchdowns. Like, he has just come out and lit the league on fire. And Derek Carr doesn't look like he's going to be slowing down either, this New Orleans team. I don't think many people expected them to be as good as they have started the season off. It'll be interesting to see how far they can go, but they play a very exciting brand of football. And, this is a team with guys on the team that I like. I wouldn't mind seeing this team do well through the playoffs, etc. And definitely I'm going to have more faith in Derek Carr next week and beyond until he shows me that I shouldn't. Dak Prescott, 27 completions, 39 attempts, 293 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. 44-19 favored the Saints. It was really the running game. The huge disparity in rushing yards. New Orleans had 190 rushing yards. Dallas had only 68 rushing yards. Like I said, passing yards have been down this season. And so teams are having to beat other teams on the rush. And Dallas just does not have that rushing game right now. Their leading rusher only had 30 yards. It's not going to get it done. The Raiders versus the Ravens. I bet Baltimore here, as I'm sure most people did. The Baltimore Ravens have started the season 0-2 after adding Derrick Henry to be your partner alongside MVP winner Lamar Jackson. I don't think anybody expected this team to be 0-2. Now, I mentioned the offensive line issues in week 1, the concerns that I had there. But I said they started to kind of look a bit better in the second half of week 1. The offensive line looked better. much for most of this game for Baltimore. And it's like it's all well and good to have this two-headed rush option attack with Henry and Lamar, but you have to have your run blockers, you have to have good blocking. And right now they just don't have good blocking. This Las Vegas Raiders team, they're 1-1 at the moment. They're being led by Gardner Minshew. Obviously they have Max Crosby there, who is an absolute beast. Plus, a pretty solid defense outside of him. But this was definitely a shock for me, especially because this was a come-from-behind win for the Raiders off that field goal at the end. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens respond to this. They are 0-2 at the moment. They're at the bottom of the AFC North. Let me see. Yeah, so them and the Bengals are both 0-2. The Steelers are leading that division at 2-0. Browns 1-1. Bengals and Ravens 0-2. And I think if you would have asked anybody, hey, will the top two teams be the Steelers and the Browns, or is it more likely to be the Bengals and the Ravens? I think people would probably have taken that latter group at the start of the season, but like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this Ravens team responds. I think that they definitely have the talent to bounce back from this, but their defense looks a bit lacking from where it was last season. Their blocking looks a bit lacking from where it was last season. And, yeah, that they definitely have fallen far short of the expectations I had of them. But this Raiders team, this is an interesting team. I don't know what to think of them so far. They're 1-1. Minshew, 30 completions on 38 attempts, 276 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Lamar Jackson, 21 completions on 34 attempts, 247 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Giants, Commanders. I picked the Commanders to win this one, and they did by the hair on their chinny chin chin. 21-18. The Giants started the season 0-2. Commanders are off to 1-1, which is good enough for them to lead the NFC East. Dale Jones, to his credit, he threw 2 touchdowns today. And Neighbors, I think this is Neighbors' first NFL TD. Should be a little 4-yarder. I don't think he had one week 1, so that should be his first NFL touchdown. Jaden Daniels also looked good. Rookie quarterback going for 226 yards, 23 for 29. Dale Jones 16 for 28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jaden Daniels had no touchdowns, no picks. Yet the quarterback who did not throw any touchdowns, his team ends up winning the game off of entirely just field goals. 27 yard, 45 yard, 26 yard, 27 yard, 29 yard, 33-30. Like, it was literally just field goal, and they win the game that way, which if you're a Giants fan, that has to be extremely frustrating. Okay, now we get to the Chargers versus the Panthers. This is the game that got Bryce Young benched. And there's something else I want to say because about this whole thing. The offensive line. Carolina invested in that offensive line and it paid off. They had the second best offensive line in the league this week. And even with more time to make decisions, more time to make reads than all but one other quarterback in the league, Bryce Young only threw for 84 yards. There was a couple plays. There was one play he had a wide open receiver downfield. He was in the pocket. Instead of just hitting that wide open receiver, he scrambled out of the pocket. Like, his decision making is just so bad. And the fact that the Panthers traded so much to get him, it's obviously not going to be the worst trade of all time, but it could end up being a top 5 worst trade of all time. And just based based on the package that was given up to acquire him, Bryce Young could go down as one of the biggest busts of all time. Your final score here is 26-3 in favor of the Chargers. Justin Herbert, 14 completions on 20 attempts, only 130 yards for Herbert. Like, this is what I'm talking about with these passing yards and things being down. Justin Herbert, he gets 2 passing touchdowns both in the first half, never throws into the end zone again. His team doesn't even, it's all just rushing. Yeah, he has a rush. There's a rush in the first half, but then that field goal, that's only the score second half for the Chargers. 2 field goals, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick for Herbert. Bryce Young, 18 completions on 26 attempts, 84 yards, 0 touchdowns, interception. And like that, when he threw out an interception, the camera cut to him, and like it looked like he was crying. And right there, that's when I was like, okay, like, it's over. It's over. Colts versus Packers with Jordan Love out. Malik Willis starting. I thought that the Colts had the edge here, especially because I thought they looked quite good week 1. I thought Anthony Richardson looked good week 1. But he came out here in week 2 and threw 3 interceptions and loses to Green Bay. Sorry, they didn't win week 1, the Colts, but I thought they looked good in week 1. They're 0-2, but and 10-16 in favor of the Packers. Anthony Richardson, 17 for 34, 204 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions, which is brutal. I said last week I wanted him to pass the ball more because he barely got the ball out last week. And, well, I guess I did get what I asked for. But yeah, Malik Willis getting this team 12 completions on 14 attempts, 122 yards, 1 touchdown. With Jordan Love out, I thought the Packers, after Love went down, were going to be dead in the water. But they get their first win of the season here. Really, they just have to kind of tread water until they can get healthy again. But we'll see. Maybe they'll handle his absence better than I thought they would. San Francisco versus Minnesota. So coming into this game, it was announced that Christian McCaffrey is going on the IL, which means he's gonna at least miss 2 more weeks, 4 more weeks, something like that. So that's obviously a bit of a concern. But I still thought this Minnesota team, they got to win week 1, okay? But this San Francisco team, like I said, some people think they're the best team in the league. Some people have them at 2. Some people have them at 3. But I don't think there's many people outside of the great state of Minnesota who would have told you that they thought the Minnesota Vikings were a better team than the San Francisco 49ers. But that appears to be the case. And I have to say that the pass rush for the San Francisco 49ers does not look to be up to snuff. Their pass rush looks a lot worse than it did last season. And it was really kind of shocking to see just how much time Sam Darnold had to make decisions in this game. And at times how open some of his receivers were. The secondary for the San Francisco 49ers I thought looked a lot more porous than it has in years. Brock Purdy had a solid game. I think he threw 319 yards, which I think he's the only quarterback to throw for more than 300 yards so far this season. But they only had 102 yards of rushing. And that's pretty much all just Jordan Mason. But yeah, the Minnesota Vikings, they get an upset here against one of the Super Bowl favorites. And at this point they're 2-0. I bet against them both times. But the Vikings, like, for me, it's like on paper I feel like they shouldn't be doing this. But then just earlier I said, well, quarterbacks don't really seem to be mattering that much this season. And even mediocre quarterbacks are getting wins, so I don't know, this feels like a weird NFL season. It feels much less predictable, which we saw a bit down the stretch last season, I have to admit, but it feels like the separation or the distinction between good teams and bad or mediocre teams is starting to blur a little bit. Browns versus Jaguars, with how bad Deshaun Watson was week 1. And then plus that new sexual assault lawsuit coming against him. I thought they were cooked. I didn't even know if he was going to play. I thought that they were talking about there's a possibility that they might either sit him or just cut him from the team entirely because of the new lawsuit. So I didn't know what was going to go on. I definitely wasn't expecting them to win this week. I was like, well, if you have people around the team talking about them cutting the guy, there's no way that he's going to play well. But Deshaun Watson has 22 completions on 34 attempts, 186 yards. Trevor Lawrence again talking about a generational quarterback come to save the day. Only 14 completions on 30 attempts, 220 yards. 0 touchdowns or interceptions. Deshaun Watson also had a rushing touchdown, but I don't know, but this Browns team and this Jaguars team right now are both hard for me to kind of put in my mental power rankings. Because I feel like this Jaguars team is worse than last year's Jaguars team. They at least look that way. When I feel like they shouldn't be looking at them, I feel like they should be as good or better, but I don't know. They're just not performing up to what I thought that they would be at this point. I don't like that this game went to overtime. I don't like that it came down to that. But this Patriots team might, maybe after week 1 and now week 2, be better than we were thinking. Now the Seahawks do get the win here. Like I said, it does go to overtime. We get a field goal in overtime. Win it there, but yeah. Geno Smith, like I said, right now he's leading the team who is leading the NFC West. 33 completions on 44 attempts, 327 yards. So Geno was another quarterback who threw for 300 yards. My apologies to Brock Purdy. 1 touchdown. 0 interceptions. Jacoby Brissett. 15 for 27, 149 yards. 1 touchdown. 0 picks. I think DK, this was his first touchdown of the season. He had a pretty good game. 129 yards off 10 receptions, a touchdown. Charbonnet continues to be a beast. He had a touchdown, only 38 yards, but he was doing a lot of dirty work, little chip yardage, things like that. The Jets versus Tennessee. The Jets lost week 1, but I thought they were very competitive against the 49ers. I thought that they went pretty much toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the league, and they never looked like they didn't belong. They win this one 24-17. Back-to-back losses now for Will Levis and the Titans. Aaron Rodgers has 18 completions on 30 attempts, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Will Levis, 19 for 28, 192 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Now, this was my upset pick. I thought that I upped to the upset pick for Tampa Bay beating Detroit, and they did end up beating Detroit. Now, my reasoning for that, I was not particularly confident in Jared Goff in week 1. I thought that he looked shaky against a Los Angeles defense that honestly, in my opinion, isn't even that great. They barely beat the Rams. And then if you looked what happened to the Rams this week, well, the Rams might not even be good, and this Lions team barely beat them. So, and then after this loss to the Buccaneers, I don't know what that's saying about the Lions right now. But yeah, Jared Goff, I was really not confident in him last week. 307 yards, but no passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions this week. The Lions are in a precarious spot right now. Like I said, top 4, top 5 for Super Bowl odds coming into this season, but right now, I don't know. I think I'd more likely bet for New Orleans to win a Super Bowl than Detroit this season at the moment. I'm just not really confident in. Honestly, for me, it is Goff. Goff for me has always kind of been the weak link of that offense. I've never been a big Jared Goff fan. That's just me personally. But I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been great. Jahmyr Gibbs has been great, but I don't know, just overall, and I feel like the defense is downgraded in Detroit. Tampa 20, Detroit 16, Baker Mayfield 12 completions on 19 attempts, 185 yards, a touchdown, interception, so much quieter week for Baker. He had 4 touchdowns last week, obviously. Jared Goff 34 for 55, 307 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rams, Cardinals, I already mentioned it here. The Cardinals, they lost week 1. I said that they looked pretty impressive still, even though they lost. But then with Los Angeles, I was like, well, they pretty much went toe-to-toe and took one of the Super Bowl favorites to overtime. So I gave Los Angeles the edge. Now I don't know if maybe Detroit's worse than we thought. Arizona's better than we thought. Obviously, these things will shake out in the coming weeks as we get to learn these teams more, but Arizona just dominated the Rams. This game was never close. There was a play where Kyler Murray threw a pass, turned around, and started celebrating as the ball was in the air, and then it went for a touchdown, like doing Steph Curry stuff. 41-10. Marvin Harrison, 4 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 32.5 yards per reception. Just absolutely brutal. Yeah, the Cardinals were just there having fun out there. Now I know Puka was out injured, but I thought even then the defense of the Rams I kind of had question marks about, but I thought their offense was enough to cause issues. But they were pretty much quiet the entire game on this Cardinals team. I don't know how to judge them. I don't know how to judge the Rams at the moment. I need to see them at least one more time, I think, here before I can kind of figure out where they go in my internal power rankings. Stafford, 19 for 27, turned 16 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Kyler Murray, this might be the highest QB rating of the entire week for any player. 17 completions on 2 attempts. Turned 66 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Steelers, Broncos. I picked the Steelers coming in here. I wasn't impressed with Bo Nix in week 1, and I know that this Pittsburgh defense is a beast. I wasn't confident in their offense, but I didn't think it would really matter. It was a low-scoring affair overall, but Pittsburgh does get the victory, 13-6 over the Broncos. Justin Fields has 13 completions on 20 attempts, 117 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 picks, and he was actually throwing to the middle of the field for once. Bo Nix, 20 completions on 35 attempts, 246 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Have any of the rookie QBs thrown a touchdown yet? Caleb Williams hasn't. Jane Daniels had a bunch of yards, but I don't think he threw a touchdown. Let me go back and double check that. Yep, no touchdowns, 226 yards. Who else has a rookie QB playing at the moment? Titans, Will Levis has not thrown a touchdown. Will Levis is not rookie, excuse me. I know I'm missing somebody, but I don't think any of this year's rookie QBs have thrown a touchdown yet through week 2. A bunch of interceptions, though. But yeah, this Pittsburgh team, really, really solid defense. It's going to be interesting to see when Russ is healthy, if they let him go. Because Justin Fields right now is 2-0. So we'll see what they do there. I still think Russ is probably the better option because honestly I didn't even think he was that bad in Denver down the stretch last year. And honestly, looking at how Denver looks this season, especially with some of their play calling, Sean Payton is potentially a much bigger issue than he is, but we'll see. Cincinnati, Kansas City, I picked the Chiefs and they just barely eked this one out. They win it with a Harrison Butker 51-yard field goal to win it. But between this game and honestly against the Ravens, who are now the Ravens who just lost to the Raiders, being a pretty close game there, this Kansas City team, I feel like Kansas City and San Francisco right now are kind of falling down my power rankings. Like, even though Kansas City is 2-0, they don't really look like world beaters at the moment. I think Buffalo looks better than Kansas City. I think New Orleans looks better. Who else would I say looks better? Maybe that's it at the moment. I would say maybe Buffalo and New Orleans, I think, are in better form at the moment. But Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions this game. I don't know when the last time he threw 2 interceptions. And he threw an interception week 1. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes has ever thrown 3 interceptions through the first 2 weeks of a season ever in his career. Yeah, like I said, the Chiefs eked this one out 25-26 in their favor. Joe Burrow, 23 completions on 36 attempts, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Patrick Mahomes, 18 completions on 25 attempts, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But like I mentioned with the Bengals and this current head coach, he has now only had 1 win through the first 2 weeks of his entire head coaching tenure in Cincinnati, which is crazy. Only 1 win in the first 2 weeks of the season since he's been a head coach. That's just absolutely brutal. Like, you have to prepare your guys better than that. Chicago versus Houston. I picked Houston here, and Houston does get the victory. 19-13 in favor of the Bears. I thought Caleb Williams threw under 100. He threw 174. He threw under 100 last week. I did think that he looked better overall this week. There were a couple drives where he was like leading the drive. I thought it looked pretty good, but that offensive line is going to get him injured. I honestly think before the end of the season that offensive line is going to get him injured or something, because he's running for his life. He's getting sacked. He got sacked 7 times for a total loss of 40 yards. Like, that offensive line is terrible. It reminds me of Joe Burrow's rookie season. And I don't understand these teams that bring in these, either like a high quality rookie quarterback, or they trade for a quarterback, but then they don't trade for or buy the protection to protect him, and they just let him get hit over and over and over. Like, you're gonna kill the guy. 23 completions, 37 attempts for Caleb Williams, 174 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like they said, there were moments I thought he looked better than he did week 1, but overall, there's still a lot of roughness, but I'd like to see him with a better offensive line, frankly. CJ Stroud, 23 for 36, 260 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Now we get to one of the craziest games I've seen in a minute. I got this one wrong. Kirk Cousins, week 1, he was not moving well. His footwork looked off. He looked slow. This week, he led a game-winning drive at the end of this thing. That was just amazing. Honestly, this was one of the games I was watching at work. Jalen Hurts got that rushing touchdown, and they had the lead there. And then Elliott got the field goal. I think then they were up 4 or something like that. No, they wouldn't have been up 4. I'm not my math. But after that field goal with like a minute 30 left, I turned the game off. I'm like, oh, this is over. And then, like, at my lunch break, I checked the score and I saw that the Falcons won. I was like, the Falcons won. So I had to go back and watch the highlights, and oh my god. Kirk Cousins. First of all, I have to say, this Atlanta Falcons team has this Philadelphia Eagles team has no pass rush. No pass rush whatsoever. Last season, they had a great pass rush. This season, Kirk Cousins was living in that pocket. He had enough time to build a tent in that pocket. I felt like he was never getting pressured at all. I don't know how the Eagles have managed to do it. Did he get sacked? He got sacked one time. That's it. And like you have like all those Georgia players in your edge rush, and it just kind of felt like they're not really doing much. And I honestly think Philadelphia, if they want to be a Super Bowl contender, they need to start pressuring quarterbacks more. And I don't know if they can, but I don't know if it's coaching, or I don't know if it's whatever, but I don't know. The only thing I can say is like the coaching felt like too cute. It just felt like too cute. It's like, well, let's run some simple plays, because if you watched Kirk Cousins in that final 2-minute drill, it was all simple plays. They weren't reinventing the wheel. Curl routes, posts. Like, he wasn't doing anything crazy. He was beating them with simple plays, simple pass plays. And I feel like the Eagles have kind of gotten away from that a little bit. And they relied so much on like the tush push last season, like some of those things, that they aren't using as much this season. They've done a little bit, but it's like I don't know if they really have an offensive identity. And that for me though, the big issue is that pass rush. But this was a crazy come from behind victory. 22-21 in favor of the Falcons. And it makes me happy. The Atlanta Falcons were a team I was hoping would do good this season. And after week 1, I was really sad they didn't do better. But watching a vintage Kirk Cousins performance, it has to be said, Bijan Robinson, absolute monster. And Saquon Barkley, I'll never understand. Atlanta could not stop him on the ground. He was pounding him on the ground, getting whatever he wanted. And then to put the game, like, to have the game rest on Saquon Barkley catching, instead of just having him run the ball again. And I didn't realize this, since 2021, Saquon Barkley has dropped more passes than any other running back. It's like, if you're gonna pass it to a running back, basically any of them but Saquon is a better option. And it's really unfortunate, because I feel like for so many people, they're only going to remember the drop and not overall a pretty good game for Saquon Barkley. And so far, he has been very impactful for the Eagles. It's just unfortunate that that's kind of what the game came down to. I mean, there was the Jalen Hurts interception at the end as well, but mostly, that's kind of a desperation move. A lot of people are going to talk about the drop more when he was killing them on the ground. But this week I did slightly better than last week. I went 9 for 16 for, let's bring up my calculator. Calculator. 9 divided by 16 is 56% correct this week. Overall, I am 17 or 32, which is 53% correct so far this season. But anyway, guys, let me know what you thought of week 2 of the NFL season, what you think of these teams so far, and maybe some of these big controversial stories, or the weird QB passing yards thing. That's kind of been a trend so far. If you liked the video, please do a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.